In studio right now is the county executive, Anthony Picente. Good morning.
Good morning.
On the phone line right now is Senator Joe Griffo. Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning, William. How are you?
Good. Well, listen, let's start with you, Joe. You're on the road. I know that we have a quick window with you because you're driving. But let's talk about reaction to what came down here. It's disturbing. It's a bit scary right now.
Well, I just got back from D.C., and I did speak to the county executive and the assemblyman yesterday from Washington. And, yeah, it's disappointing and also disgusting. But I think that the officials who gathered show that we are continued to be in coordination here and on top of the matter. In fact, I know, Jeff, I was listening to you today because being in the car, Jeff asked a question of somebody, I think Assemblyman Butler, at what point do the elected officials regionally have accountability? Well, we always have accountability, and the issue is we have delivered. From our perspective, we identify emerging opportunities. That is something where I believe we have positioned our community through the leadership of the county executive, working with the mayors, the assemblyman, and I, and our delegation. We try to make sure that resources are delivered to the area, that we identify technology like nanotechnology, working with Mohawk Valley Edge, working with cybersecurity at the Homeland Security Center and at the Air Force Research Lab. So what we're trying to do is when you identify opportunities for the future, to then position and dedicate resources. And I think from that perspective, we've done that. We have made sure that the appropriations are being made and identified. What takes place within the auspices of those who are in charge with the responsibility to get this done is another story now, and there has to be accountability there. Yeah. So, but I think that we talked about this the other day with you when I was on the air a couple days ago. $300 million to the hospital is a significant lift for this area. Now, whether the hospital gets built is not the responsibility of the local officials. We have delivered. Now it's up to Mohawk Valley Health Systems to do their part of the job.
And Senator, just to be clear, what I was, I guess, getting at is, you know, there are I'll say Republicans locally who, doesn't matter what the governor says, they think he's lying and they don't like him for a number of reasons. But when they hear Republican Joe Griffo say it and Tony Picente say the jobs are coming or the investment's going to be here, et cetera, they think, okay, it's actually coming. But when it doesn't come, or if it doesn't come, what I was saying is, at what point do people say, well, you know, Joe, you told me it was coming? That's what I was getting to. I know you have delivered on funding.
Right, no, legitimate question. But that's what I'm saying is, I think County Executive Picente has done an outstanding job, as well as Mohawk Valley Edge. The assemblyman, myself, the local mayors, all of us are trying to work together, and we're giving you the message based upon all the information we have.
Right.
It's our continued belief right now that despite what is taking place there, and that is shameful, what is taking place there, and there needs to be accountability, and we need major changes in the way we do business. I mean, we've talked about this on the show before too, Bill. There should be a macro approach to economic development where we lessen regulations and utility costs and lower taxes. Instead, we're competing in an unconventional means where you're building facilities, but other states are doing likewise. So you need to be competitive in order to attract these industries right now. I'd like to change the whole paradigm, but right now we're playing within a framework that exists.
It's easy to say, no more corporate welfare, but the problem is you're sink ships while 49 other ships are sailing along. That's the problem. And
absolutely.
All right, Joe, I want to leave with you on one thing, and then I'm going to go to the county executive. Joe and I from time to time will go out in a social setting, and I'll say, hey, I got tickets or something to some event, and the first thing you say to me is, I can't do that. That's not that it's against the rules. So I know you to be so paranoid about the rules, and here's this guy trying to get boxes of ziti for his wife, and he's in the circle of the governor. I mean, what is going on here?
Yeah, I mean, that's totally right. I mean, it's not being paranoid. It's being observant of the rules and regulations. And when you get to this level, that's what's really disappointing and disgusting right now, because some of these people, I cannot believe that they would subject themselves to this. And we can only know what we're hearing at this point in time. It does not appear in any way to have come to the governor, but on the other hand, the governor is a micromanager, and these are senior staff that are around him, so there has to be greater accountability when you're looking at staff that are involved. Now, from Dr. Caballeros' perspective, this was another unorthodox guy, a bright guy, but a lot of hubris there. So I think that in this case, I would even go a step further. We've already communicated to the chancellor and going to speak to the chairman of the board of trustees. He's been removed right now and suspended without pay, but I believe he should be fired from his job as president of the college, because the institution's integrity and image is very important right now. And even though he may be presumed innocent until otherwise, the college right now does not need that stain on them, and we need to move quickly on trying to get a permanent head into that facility in some role, in my opinion.
All right, Joe. We appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
That's the takeaway right there. Is Griffo says he should be fired. County executive, good morning.
Good morning.
Your thoughts on that comment?
Well, I still go back to what is always said. Everyone's innocent until proven guilty. These charges are not good, though, and I think that when you look at someone who's charged with millions of dollars and just all of this power, so to speak, I mean it does. I mean it raises too many questions.
Doesn't it? I want to.
Should he be the president of a college that deals with the educational institution and in terms of programming and enhancing and doing what I see our other presidents do, and clearly you have a role on your capital projects at your campus, but to do economic development throughout the state, and that's one of the things I said yesterday, that as this project, our project, was over the last few weeks put under the control and direction of Empire State Development. That's where it belongs. That's where the checks and balances are. That's who does economic development. And so I think a lot of this is, it really does. I agree with the senator that a lot of things have to be looked at. Given this, it's unfortunate. And it really is disgusting. These are people I worked with, and I know them. I'm appalled at.
I'm not a big swearer, but I want to swear here, but doesn't it blink you off? Didn't you just yesterday, or when the word started coming out? Don't you? You have to get angry. You're right. So much is riding on this. Mm-hmm. Not forget your reputation and your political career or whatever people want to talk about, but so much is riding on this for this area.
Sure.
Doesn't it just anger the
hell
out of you?
Look, whenever you believe in something so deeply, and again, aside from the personal pieces of the office, and Jeff's point is dead on. Are we accountable? Of course we are.
Yeah.
But I do these things because I believe in them, and I've invested just time and other energies and county resources because we believe in them, and they're coming. And we want them to come to fruition. And then you have these. I don't know what
back to the swear word. I got to tell you, you want to use you want to swear,
and you wonder what goes through their minds on these things, but. And looking at it, it is, and I've heard some other and I've talked clearly to the senator and assemblyman yesterday, and I heard Mark Butler on before I came in here, and he's right. I mean, look, the buck. It's the same in county government. I mean, there are numerous capital projects that we oversee.
Yeah,
buck stops with me if something's going on. I'm and it is hard to be aware of all that, but that's where you have to have people you could trust. Unfortunately. The governor thought he could trust these people. Yeah. He's got fooled, and he does have to step up and say, okay, we got to look at things differently, and he does have to reassure us.
Obviously, the hope is that the jobs still come. Sure, 2,500, 3,000 jobs, GE, AMS. At this point, I know it's only 24 hours later. Mm-hmm. Who reaches out to GE, their point person, or AMS, and says, listen, obviously this happened, but we're still moving forward. Is it you? Is it the governor? Is it Steve DeMio? Who handles that?
It's really a combination. I think, and I will speak strictly for AMS because I have not been involved directly directly in my office with the GE project. I mean, I was informed of it when it was, and we've been kept abreast to.
This is a governor's deal.
Things.
The GE
thing
the
GE was more of a state deal. The AMS deal was more of our deal, and I'm not walking away from it. I just don't know. So the question with GE is, I would assume that ESD will pick up the mantle on that one and go forward with it, given the circumstances of yesterday. I do know that AMS was put in that position a few weeks ago I continued discussions with the company. I've had direct discussions with the company from the very beginning because, remember, the other point here on AMS, and I know we say it, but it does get lost in translation because a lot of things are happening. AMS was a result of Mohawk Valley Edge. That was the site, the selection process
back 10 years.
Mohawk Valley,
Yeah.
but no, AMS directly.
Yeah.
The company directly, through the way economic development is done, reached out to Steve DeMio and had gone and went to Austria, and we were aware of that, and we brought that project to the state for our land at Marcy.
Which is why it's so important right now to show AMS that this is under control.
Absolutely. And given the circumstances and yesterday was the culmination of what we heard several months ago when all of this started breaking on Buffalo and all these things. And so that was in the air, and there was clearly, you knew that the other shoe had to fall at some point, that these accusations and indictments or whatever they were at the time were out there from Bahara, and something's going to happen.
Were you surprised by Caballeros?
Yeah, I'm surprised by all of them.
Yeah,
I was surprised by, I worked with him on this project and others. I worked with Todd Howe. I worked with Joe Percoco on different things. I'm appalled. I'm really. Look, we've all had. I told this to Jeff off the air. We've all had friends or acquaintances that have gotten in trouble, and you're always shocked when that happens, no matter what the circumstances are. But things happen.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's really mind blowing. And
I have an interesting theory on all of this. I want to throw at you coming up here.
I just have a quick question. Assemblyman Brindisi had talked about earlier that the possibility of charges had been looming for about a year. Is it possible that this now may in some way fast forward the projects? Maybe those companies were a little bit hesitant to really make the full hit the full go button on these projects because of the looming.
I want to parlay off what you're saying, and I've followed this whole thing from the beginning, and from my standpoint, the legitimacy of all of this was how important this and turning around upstate New York is to Andrew Cuomo, because I believe, this is just my personal belief, that he has higher aspirations to go on into bigger and better places. Sure. So I've always said it's going to happen because Cuomo has to have it happen. If he wants to move on, he can't have this upstate New York being such an economic drag on his proposed candidacy if he were to move forward. So I guess I would say this. Does this actually put more pressure, and it really does, it puts more pressure on the governor to make this work, because if it doesn't work, this is clearly the disaster that everybody's predicting right now.
Well, look, I've been in government and politics my entire life, so there are two things that clearly you look at accomplishments, and you set out with a series of goals. The worst thing that can happen to anybody in office is scandal of this exact proportion. Public corruption in terms of the misuse and misappropriation, bribery, all of the things that you heard yesterday, are damaging to anybody, and it's damaging to the state's reputation, given that we've been going through this the last couple of years with the two leaders of the biggest the legislature.
I think we're cleaning things up, and it's still continuing.
It really is about now given that. Companies, I said this yesterday when we were at our press conference, companies are still interested in New York. They still want to come here because it's about where they can establish, where they can work, where they can build upon, and they've been doing that. Now, does this put a cloud over it? Of course it does. Does it give relief that, these things get cleaned up? And I think you got to look at the circumstances, at least the way they're outlined in this indictment, that this goes after the businesses that were doing the work, not the companies that were coming here, which is a good sign. Which is a good sign. In that piece.
Oh, the last thing we would want to have heard is AMS mentioned in this thing.
Well, or any of the companies directly that were perhaps from another place. So I think that, and now that doesn't make it. And I know it doesn't make it good.
I get it.
Doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it. I'm not condoning any of it in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying you have to look at the specifics of it, and then you have to look at how is this done in the first place, and it goes back to what's the mechanism. For years, and I worked at ESD for 6 years before I was county executive. A different governor, but still same agency, and they were the charge of economic development. That's where it needs to stay, because there's checks and balances, there's reviews, there's all the things that are in place. You start fracturing it out to different agencies and different entities, such as whether it's the educational institutions, SUNY Poly, Fort Schuyler Management, all of these things start clouding up, the menu, and clearly it
well, it's allowed for people
problems.
to go a bit rogue, and that's a problem.
Quickly, am I correct that none of the contractors named, whether it be the energy company, the Syracuse developer, that's only an hour away, nobody named did any work?
Nobody did.
On
No,
the-
at
on the
AMS,
Hill
no.
here.
On the Hill, no.
Okay.
No. And again, the bids have not been, released for the construction at this point. They're in design phase in that regard.
Well, Quad C is up, though.
Quad C is up.
Yeah.
But Quad C is still going through some revisions for GE. In fact, just the other day, when you mentioned GE in terms of what was going on, and the controller released. The state controller released $20 million for the GE project because it's a combination of Albany and Utica. So I'm assuming that project still,
Yeah.
or I have no reason to believe it's not moving. It's about where that's going. So those are things too. You got a controller who's looking at these things.
Any of those developments, those developers, those contractors involved in the building of Quad C? Do we know?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
No.
All right.
I mean, it was M&W, and I'm trying to think of who else was
All
up
right.
there. There were some others, but
clearly-
and this was one that yesterday there were a lot of questions about what's happening up the hill between AMS and Quad C and others, and I'm assuming this like other people, because I read the same things that everybody reads, that you read and others, in terms of the complaint. Nobody comes and talks to me, tells me that the Bahar doesn't call me and say this is what's going on, but you have to look at it from the point of these players that were involved, in particular Caballeros and Howe, and say, okay, they weren't, and they have been involved in projects here. So you got to believe that they looked at this, because if they looked at Albany, Syracuse, and Buffalo, there's projects here too. So I'm assuming they looked at it and there was nothing there, and that's the good news for us. But now it is up to us to stay focused on it and just remain diligent, and it's up to the governor.
Pressure on the governor
reassure.
like never
Absolutely.
before here, I would
Absolutely.
say. Okay. County Executive Anthony Picente, thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Picente.
Sorry.
Same.
Is it the same?
We're interchangeable sometimes.
It's been a very, very stressful morning. So,
It's been a stressful
yeah.
week. I mean, there's clearly this is not good, and but we'll get through this.
Picente,
Picente.
thanks.